You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16 and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to State of the Nation on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, it's a show that speaks up for you, the forgotten majority. What are we talking about tonight? The Prime Minister is on his way to the United States for his meeting with President Donald Trump. Tonight, I'm going to be asking, when will Prime Minister Keir Starmer stand up for the UK's interests? The new report has warned against a legal definition of Islamophobia, as it could stifle legitimate debate about the rape gangs. We'll be talking about that. The international judge who ruled in favour of giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius has called on the UK to pay £18 trillion in slavery reparations. Plus, I'll be reflecting on the presence of Antifa at a Reform Party conference the other day. I was there, I saw it firsthand. It was truly shocking. But what does it mean for politics moving forward? Welcome to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. It starts right now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my top panel, columnist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn, and founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/yoursay and hit me up on X at GoodwinMJ. Now, it's time for the News Bulletin with Sophia Wensler.
Matt, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your headlines. Donald Trump has confirmed President Zelensky will visit him on Friday to sign a very big agreement. The US president held his first cabinet meeting at the White House since his inauguration last month, joined by his billionaire advisor Elon Musk. Attention quickly turned to the minerals deal with Ukraine.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement. And I want to thank Howard and Scott for the job you guys did in putting it together. Really did an amazing job. And that'll be on rare earth and other things.
He went on to say the United States would not be making security guarantees for Ukraine in its deal to end the war with Russia, but that Europe would. Meanwhile, Downing Street has confirmed that Zelensky will meet with Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders in London on Sunday. It is thought that Mr. Zelensky is planning to make the trip to discuss defence. Elsewhere, Sir Keir Starmer has refused to say if the deal to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius would be funded by the increase in defence spending. The Prime Minister told the Commons that the increase to 2.5% of GDP is for our capability on defence and security in Europe, and described the deal being negotiated with Mauritius as extremely important for our security. Tory MP Kieran Mullen asked Sir Keir during Prime Minister's questions to give an unequivocal answer on where the money would come from, but the Prime Minister declined to say whether the money for the deal would come out of the increase in defence spending. Meanwhile, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has been in the Commons voting on the Chagos Islands deal motion and has sparked outrage by suggesting we sell it to America.
Would rather see America have the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands that are corrupt Mauritius. Why don't we, if we're going to give this up, let's sell. Let's get a few billion quid for the Mauritius Islands, for the Chagos Islands. Mauritius has no legal basis, no legal claim, and you know what? Investment would come. The Chagosians could go back and get well-paid jobs. I want us to keep sovereignty, but if you're prepared to give away this country's interests, sell it to America, don't give it away to corrupt Mauritius.
GB News can exclusively reveal more than 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel illegally since the start of the year. The latest group of 138 arrived last night, brought into Dover by Border Force after being picked up in UK waters. Earlier, another boat was intercepted after some on board refused French rescue and continued towards Britain. The government is pushing new laws to criminalise those who reject rescue as Labour vows to smash the gangs. And the Vatican has said Pope Francis's condition has improved slightly and his mild kidney problems have been resolved. The Vatican also said the Pope's CT scan has shown a normal evolution of the pulmonary inflammation. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Matt.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back tonight to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is on his way to the United States of America for his meeting tomorrow with President Donald Trump. And a new opinion poll released this afternoon shows that a majority of the British public think that the Prime Minister will be bad at negotiating with Donald Trump. Shocker. But the outcome of this meeting may well define the special relationship between the US and the UK for the next 4 years, which is why tonight I want to ask, when will Prime Minister Keir Starmer start standing up for the national interest? After all, it was Vice President J.D. Vance who said this at CPAC, a big conservative conference in America, last week.
I'm not even blaming the Europeans. I'm actually saying you follow the lead of Joe Biden into censorship and mass migration. Follow the lead of Donald J. Trump, and that's free speech, borders, and sovereignty.
Free speech, borders, sovereignty. But how is Keir Starmer doing with pursuing our own national interests? First, there's a disastrous Chagos deal that could see the government not only give away sovereign territory of strategic significance, but also give Mauritius as much as £18 billion for the pleasure. How many winter fuel payments, I wonder, would that cover? We also see the government's secret new bill that is going to allow the UK government to align UK regulations with the EU as a matter of default, a complete affront to the vote for Brexit. The Labour cabinet, of course, is also filled with Britain-hating masochists like David Lammy, who apologise for who we are, who think that we should be ashamed of our history and should pay reparations for what happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. With Labour's decriminalisation of illegal migration, which of course now we must call irregular migration, we also see a refusal to control our own borders. Labour has refused to put a cap on legal immigration, illustrating a lack of will to control this enormous issue as well. Some of you may remember the time that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, then leader of the opposition, said this.
You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained.
I'd really like to know if Keir Starmer still believes that, and I wonder what Donald Trump would make of it too. Does he think that the true source of power in this country are the elites in Davos, or does he think the true source of power in this country are you, the tax-paying, hard-working people? The sooner the Prime Minister realises that JD Vance was right, that the biggest threat to the UK is not China or Russia, but is actually coming from within our own societies, the propensity to curtail freedom in the name of liberal orthodoxy, and that we must pursue the national interests, the sooner the special relationship can be reinvigorated and we can see the return of the UK's relevance on the world stage. As ever, let me know your views via gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GoodwinMJ. But I'm joined now by the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, live from Washington, D.C., Niall Gardner. Niall, an enormous moment for Keir Starmer. The first time he's sitting down with Donald Trump since the election victory. Some, of course, will be wondering why it's taken so long for our Labour Prime Minister to meet with Donald Trump. Could you give us a sense as to how Team Trump are going to be approaching and thinking about this important negotiation with Keir Starmer?
Well, thanks, Matt, for having me on the show from Washington. As you point out, of course, hugely important meeting for Keir Starmer. I have to say that the image of the UK right now under Starmer's disastrous socialist Labour government is really hitting an all-time low. I mean, certainly in terms of the last few decades or so. And I think that Starmer is viewed in the United States as a sort of woke lefty figure, somebody who is completely on a different planet in many respects to the way in which Donald Trump thinks. And you highlighted, of course, JD Vance's excellent comments to CPAC last week, and also his earlier comments to the Munich Security Conference, where Vance spoke about the need to protect freedom of speech in the UK and across Europe. And Vance is saying what any British leader should be saying, which is that freedom of speech is sacrosanct, it should be protected and preserved. And so I think this is going to be a tense meeting between Trump and Starmer, because ideologically they're completely different. Donald Trump is a very revolutionary leader who is fundamentally transforming not only the United States, but also, I think, the world with his leadership. I mean, you look at Keir Starmer and how he's betraying his own country, of course, with the Chagos Islands deal. And it's like night and day in terms of real depth and quality and leadership there.
Niall, just let's zoom in on that Chagos deal. In Westminster today, Nigel Farage has given a speech which is already going viral, in which he suggested that, look, if we're going to give away our own territory, why don't we give it to the Americans? Why don't we sell it to the Americans under Donald Trump? I mean, that's almost certainly going to come up tomorrow in the questions to Keir Starmer and Trump in terms of questions from the media. How do you think that suggestion will go down in Washington?
Well, it's a very interesting idea, and of course, it's a far better idea than Keir Starmer's proposal to simply give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, which happens to be, of course, a close Chinese ally. This threatens the long-term future of the US base at Diego Garcia. The whole Chagos Islands surrender is absolutely insane. And Keir Starmer is not only betraying the British people, but he's also slapping the United States in the face with this deal. There's already very strong political opposition in Washington to the deal. I hope that Donald Trump is going to intervene tomorrow and sink this deal and send it to the bottom of the Indian Ocean. And what Starmer is doing here is incredibly dangerous, it's incredibly reckless, and it is a huge betrayal of not only the United Kingdom, but also the United States as well, Britain's closest friend and ally.
We have seen in recent days Keir Starmer come forward and say he's going to reduce foreign aid, international aid, in order to increase defence spending to 2.5%. Is that going to win him any favour in Team Trump? Is that going to perhaps win him at least some mild applause at the meeting tomorrow?
Of course, it's always good when the UK increases defence spending, but 2.5% of GDP is not going to wow the US administration. Donald Trump's been talking about European allies increasing defence spending to 5% of GDP. And so what Starmer is saying here, I think, is a last-ditch effort to save face. I don't think it's going to impress President Trump and the US administration. They'll see through this really as a rather cynical exercise by Keir Starmer, who previously refused to commit to even 2.5% of GDP. So I think they'll see this really as a sort of last gasp sort of political exercise. And the UK should be spending at least 4% of GDP, frankly, on defence. You look at Poland, it spends 4.1% of GDP on its defence. And the UK is a far richer nation than Poland. And I think that, Keir Starmer, he just doesn't come across as a serious politician, serious leader, frankly. He's a million miles away from Winston Churchill or Margaret Thatcher. It's very sad, actually, that he's the Prime Minister today.
Well, Niall Gardner, thanks for your analysis. We'll look forward to reading more of it tomorrow as this historic meeting unfolds. Now, I want to bring in my panel, Patrick O'Flynn and Aaron Bastani. Patrick, what are you going to be watching tomorrow? What are you going to be keeping your eyes on?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that the Chagos deal collapses. I actually think Nigel Farage has made a mistake today, because I'm sure the vast majority of Reform voters and perhaps activists, they're patriotic for Britain. They're very interested in a lot of stuff that Donald Trump's doing. But the idea we should be trying to contrive a way of handing America British territory, I think, overcomplicates things. I think the overwhelming feeling in the country is this is British territory. Let's stop giving away British territory, full stop. I also think, actually, I expect the day to go all right, because whatever you think about Starmer, he's done a couple of things. He's not bad-mouthed Donald Trump in public at all, despite obvious differences. I think that's psychologically quite astute and very disciplined. And again, the announcement on defence spending, I think, will go down well to a certain extent. And, other ministers have even kind of bigged up Donald Trump. And I'm sure, again, Prince of Darkness, Peter Mandelson, our new ambassador, whatever you think of him, I think he's quite a high calibre operator, and he will have been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes preparation. So I don't think Keir Starmer will fall flat on his nose tomorrow. I just hope his Chagos disgrace crashes and burns.
Aaron, what are you going to be watching?
Well, I think it's impossible to know how it will go. I think you made a very compelling argument there a moment ago. What the gentleman said a few seconds ago in regards to British defence spending, saying that we need to be spending 4% of GDP on defence, is just extraordinary. That would be an extra £35 billion a year. And I think this is really important to say, Matt.
Well, it's only twice what we're spending on foreign aid. About 15
it's close to 3 times. But the point is this, and after these cuts, actually, foreign aid is going to be reduced to about 7 or 8 billion. So,
which 2/3 of the
so it'll be 5 times what's remaining of foreign aid. The UK spends 10% of its government spending on servicing its public debt. Productivity hasn't grown for 18 years. We have a net debt to GDP ratio of about 100%. The fundamentals are very bad. We almost had an emergency budget in January. And I feel like people like that gentleman there, but also, by the way, many people within the government don't understand what is happening to the country, don't understand at the macro level how structurally we're in a very bad place. And Keir Starmer said his first responsibility is national defence, security. I totally agree. But you don't do that, you don't pursue a strategy to ensure national security and defence by creating a debt crisis, which is what you would do, by the way, if we started spending 4% of GDP on military spending, when we've got all the fundamentals I just mentioned.
But how do you think Donald Trump is going to be viewing this meeting and looking in at the UK from the outside? I mean, we are directly undermining America's strategic interests by selling off the Chagos Islands. The Labour ministers, the Labour Party that you know and have been involved with for a period of time, have been very anti-Trumpian in the things that they've said. I mean, walking in the room, there's going to be a cold breeze, a very noticeable chill in the White House, is there not?
Well, 100%. I mean, you had, David Lammy was, Mr. Resistance when it came to the first Trump presidency, although it's really important to say Starmer never got on that train. And I think that probably does count for something with Team Trump. I really don't know. I think Donald Trump is an incredibly capricious individual. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes at that meeting tomorrow saying, Keir Starmer, great guy, really happy with what they're doing on defence spending. Equally, I wouldn't be surprised if he said, Chagos, terrible deal, awful, Britain, complete failure, Farage needs to be PM. I have no idea.
Patrick, there is this question about when is Keir Starmer going to stand up for our national interests? Now, Aaron's saying, well, you know, he's not doing that by ignoring the deeper structural problems in the country. I would point to Chagos. I'd also say cozying up to the EU, a declining bloc, we should be positioning elsewhere. But there is a question, isn't there, here about when is Keir Starmer going to actually represent our national interest?
Well, indeed, and he's also, the government's entered into talks with, if I would use the term, grifting Commonwealth regimes about this whole idea of us paying reparations for slavery. I do think there's a sort of Starmer reboot in operation just now, and the foreign aid speech, the foreign aid commitment was part of that. Sending out a video of illegal immigrants being deported was part of it. So I think on the optics side, Keir Starmer is going to spend the next few months posing as a sort of blue-collar champion of social conservatism. Now, I don't think he believes that for a minute, but I think he's ruthless enough to try and put on that change of clothes. The other thing I would say to Aaron's point is, I think Trump kind of likes Britain. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a jibe in there about free speech and the drastic decline of free speech in this country. And I hope Donald Trump does raise that, because I think it's such an important issue.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, J.D. Vance did hit a nerve in Europe where he said the problems are coming from within. They're not actually coming from Russia, China. I mean, J.D. Vance clearly has a point. We haven't really seen any serious response from Starmer or the Labour Party to that critique.
Well, the US has in its constitution a fundamental codified right to freedom of speech. And that jibe was made not just in reference to us, but also Germany. And
I'm beginning to think we should have that.
I think we should. I think we should. And I don't think that's a left-right thing, by the way. I think we should. And if you care about free speech, I think it's probably necessary.
I find I'm agreeing more and more with Aaron as he years go on.
There you go. Well, the point is, you know, in a society where you have incredible levels of political, ideological homogeneity, yeah, maybe you can get away with a convention, uncodified constitution. That's simply not the world we live in anymore. You have social media. Anybody can say anything, anytime. How do you protect that without a constitutional right to free speech? I don't think you can.
Sure. Well, thank you to my panel. Now, after the break, we're going to be turning to debate whether Labour's new definition of Islamophobia, get this, could fuel the sensitivities that led to the rape gang scandal. We're going to be talking about this important new change. You really need to know about it. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes right here.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
We featured the hunt for Piglet, the Chihuahua, who vanished after a burglary on a canal boat in Uxbridge last March.
Well, his owner, Mel, desperate to be reunited, has recruited the services of pet detective Colin Butcher.
And what is a pet detective, Colin?
The best way to describe it is I'm a private detective, but I only specialise in animal cases.
And do you ever have to deal with dog abductions? We know that they're happening more and more now, aren't they? They happen very frequently, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Pet Abduction Act. I still class them as dog thefts, because that's what they are.
Yeah, this came in under the Tories, didn't it, in August. So a lot of people wouldn't be aware of this, that it wasn't actually a crime, was it? To steal a dog or cat.
And animals were treated as an item of property, and there's no consideration whatsoever for the owner's torment and mental anguish, which is considerable when your pet goes missing.
Of course it is, Colin. The thing is that if the police treat it like someone's nicked your bike and whatever, that's very unfortunate and you think really bad, but you can always buy a new bike.
Yes.
What is it like, and you've seen it up close and personal, when people lose something so dear to them?
The heart has no way of deciding how much grief and anguish there will be, whether it's a member of your family or whether it's a pet. So you still suffer, but you also have that horrible feeling of guilt that you shouldn't be grieving that way, or you feel guilty that you could have done more before your animal was stolen or went missing. And then there are people thinking, well, it's only a pet. So it's a really, really difficult time for owners.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, we've just been discussing Keir Starmer and Donald Trump's big meeting tomorrow. You've been writing in. June says, JD Vance was right about this country. We've lost the right to free speech. We've got too many illegal migrants, and if we speak out about our concerns, we get called far right. Where is the money coming from to give Mauritius, and why are we giving away an island that we own? Another viewer says, I hope Donald Trump tells him what an absolute mess he's making of the UK and tells him to grow a spine and become a patriot instead of selling out the British people big time. Keep your views coming in. Of course, you can hit me up on X at GoodwinMJ. Now, a new policy exchange report has warned against the government's potential plans for enshrining its adopted definition of Islamophobia into law. The report reveals the troubling extent to which accusations of Islamophobia are being used as a way to suppress the exposure of the grooming gang scandal and how enshrining this definition could lead to more censorship. I'm joined now by the broadcaster and commentator Fahima Mohammed. Welcome to the show. Are you in favour of Labour's definition of Islamophobia?
Well, there isn't really anything set at this moment in time where we can be scared of. I think that there does need to be some sort of recognition and acknowledgement that there is some anti-Muslim discrimination and is on the increase and rise. And this, you know, think tank, this sort of policy that you've just mentioned, is only focusing on something which is the grooming gangs in sort of consideration as, you know, being some sort of like, you know, a real issue that if we were to talk about it, it is going to be Islamophobic. But I don't see that being said anywhere.
Well, just to be clear, the reason they're saying that is the original APPG report, the All Parliamentary Party group report on the definition of Islamophobia from 2018, specifically, which was endorsed by Labour, was endorsed by Keir Starmer and Labour MPs, specifically mentioned the grooming gangs as an example of Islamophobia. It also specifically referenced things like talking about demographic changes in societies, for example, increases in the share of the population that is Muslim as Islamophobia. Now, many people watching the show would say, well, isn't that stifling debate over these issues? In fact, isn't that exactly what led to these issues being downplayed in the first place?
I don't think that that is actually necessarily true. I just don't think that, you know, if we have these kind of discussions, it does lead to Islamophobic sort of, you know, tropes and whatever it is. I do feel that we do need to have open discussion, but the fear of actually labelling these grooming gangs as in the whole entire community, we have to recognise that. I do feel there needs to be a definition where we can have free speech, and it is never going to be where it's going to be blasphemous laws. That's never going to happen in the UK. I think it's a scaremongering so that they can say whatever they want, where I think the precedent's already there for anti-Semitic sort of, you know, ways in which you cannot say certain things or you shouldn't say certain things. So that should be applied to Muslims, to Hindus, to Christians, and there's already something set there. So I don't see what's the problem. It's just that when it comes to a particular group, it seems like as if, you know, we don't seem to have the same rights and we don't seem to have the same ways as being looked at to have our freedom of expression and speech and religion. I really do feel that this is just scaring the fact that if we have this sort of definition come in, it's going to take away all this kind of criticism. amongst Muslims themselves and scholars, as well as myself, we do criticise each other. We talk about different things. Muslims and Islam is not just one definition, nor practice. So you can't just say that and make it like as if to say, you know, it's going to make it where we're going to have these blasphemous laws, we're going to, you know, basically take on one particular group against the rest of everyone and prioritise this minority group because of their religious beliefs. Absolutely not, because we do the same for the Jews. Why can't it be the same for the Muslims in the same respect?
You say that, but as I say, the original report that is going to underpin...
That was just for that case.
Well, that was the APPG report that was endorsed by the Labour Party, has a long list of things that it would consider to be Islamophobic.
Again, it's considered to be...
If I could finish, this is why people are nervous, because they're not making it up. It's in print. It's been endorsed by Labour MPs who are now in government. So this is why people are asking this question, including references to things like grooming gangs, including references to things like a significant increase in the share of the population that is Muslim, including things perhaps like discussing why do we have Sharia courts in the UK? I think
that is wrong. We don't have Sharia courts in the UK.
We have nearly 100.
They're councils that just address certain things which every other religion does as well.
Let me ask a question. If we were to have this definition of Islamophobia, let's say it's the one that's used in the APPG report, which is likely, given that that was signed off by Labour ministers, would you and I be able to have a serious conversation about why Pakistani Muslim males are disproportionately more likely to be involved in grooming, and for that not to be described as Islamophobic? Because under that report, I think there is a risk as a broadcaster that I would not go near that debate because I might violate a law. That is suppressing free speech.
I don't think it's going to come to that. I really don't think so. I think in this country, it's never going to happen that way. I think, again, it's going to be where we are going to be able to have these debates, but when it's like a focus, a microscope, right, and a spotlight on one particular group all the time, and also highlighting the ethnicity, the thing. We'll do the same for every other gang that is out there.
In all fairness, though, not every other group is disproportionately more likely to have been involved in this scandal. So the reason that people are talking about these gangs being predominantly Pakistani Muslim is because they are. Now, I understand
that's fine.
I understand there is an anxiety about talking about it, and nobody.
There is no anxiety talking about it.
Nobody is saying
it's wrong for what they did, and that's fine.
So
we all
agree on that. So what we don't want to be in a position in the future is for us to have a conversation about the grooming gang scandal, or why we have Sharia councils in this country, or why schools like the Michaela School are being taken to court when they are banning prayer for all children from different religions. They're being taken to court, in some cases by Muslim families.
Because that also infringes on certain human rights.
But you see...
It's not even against what you're just saying. That's for every faith. If a Jewish person wanted to do certain things, they'd also have a right to do it. It's just that when a Muslim does it, then it's regarded as something that, you know, like, OK, I am female. It is really maybe dangerous for a female to go outside and walk in the evening. But no, it doesn't apply to me because I'm brown skin and I visibly look Muslim. That's what it comes across as.
Well, I think it comes across as that to certain people, but we might also ask or want to debate why a school teacher in this country is still in hiding, having offended Muslims.
I'm not here to defend extremists.
But the issue is, for many people,
when
they look at this report, they see an attempt to stifle and chill free speech and free expression in this country.
It's never going to happen.
Well, let's see. Let's see if it does or not. But thank you, Fahima, for coming on and debating the issue. Now, in a moment, should the UK pay £18 trillion in slavery reparations? Yeah, you heard me. Another bonkers number we're going to be discussing. You won't believe who made this suggestion. Find out in a couple of minutes right here. State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there's some fairly wet weather affecting some parts of more southern Europe. We have a band of rain sweeping in, affecting Madeira, also Portugal and western parts of Spain. Some stronger winds here as well. A little bit drier across more central parts, some decent sunshine on offer here, but still more unsettled weather affecting eastern parts of the Med towards Greece, towards Cyprus. There's some heavy rain around, but things are looking drier, not necessarily sunny, into the weekend. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, the Chagos Islands story just gets stranger by the day. Not only has Prime Minister Keir Starmer refused to say whether the payment of up to £18 billion to Mauritius will be included in the defence spending increase, but now one of the international judges who ruled on the case, get this, has chimed in on the reparations debate. Patrick Robinson, a Jamaican judge who previously served on the International Court of Justice, has claimed that the UK should now pay, wait for it, £18 trillion in slavery reparations, because we have £18 trillion kicking about. Well, I'm joined now by the historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Manku, as well as my excellent panel tonight. We've got former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Rafe, why are people in the elite class so obsessed with the issue of slavery reparations?
Well, it's proof, if proof were needed, that the Long March to the institution doesn't just apply to national institutions, it applies also to international bodies like the ICJ. And you have to understand, none of this is actually about slavery and reparations. This is an avaricious cash grab by the Caribbean states, and the judge in question here is a long-standing reparations activist for the Caribbean states. And also from the left, of course, this is an attempt to undermine Britain and the West and use the politics of victimhood and post-colonial imperial guilt to do that. And once you look at it through that lens, then you begin to understand the geopolitics here and what's going on. It's no surprise either that another judge on the ICJ was a former member of the communist government who now sits on there, who also voted on Chagos. Russia also trying to influence the ICJ on Chagos to essentially add costs to Britain as penalty for its position in the Ukraine war. And you know this is not about slavery, because if this was about slavery, you would have them equally vocal about the plight of modern slaves today, where 7 in every 1,000 Africans is a slave. 10 million people. The CNN reported that hundreds of slaves are sold every week in Libya. There are 800,000 slaves in Cameroon. So where are these people protesting outside the high commissions of Niger, of Nigeria, outside the Sudanese embassy? The fact that they are more concerned about the plights of people 200 years ago rather than those people we can save today speaks volumes about all of this. And of course, this thing about 18 trillion came out at a speech that this judge gave standing next to Sadiq Khan, a man who constantly lectures Britain about its role in the slave trade, wants a museum for slavery, yet he's always telling us that he's the son of a Pakistani bus driver. He went on an official visit to Pakistan, the global centre of slavery, and not one did he raise the topic. That, I think, speaks volumes.
We've also read today this remarkable story, I mean, I've just shared it on X, that we're taking down portraits of people like Nelson, probably the greatest naval commander that ever lived, and we're putting up portraits of Yvette Cooper. Now, I can't think of a single thing Yvette Cooper has ever achieved apart from losing control of our borders. And that, to me, seems to also play into what you're saying, in that people like Nelson apparently had some sort of loose connection with slavery, and yet here's the morally righteous, I would argue, narcissistic Labour MPs like Yvette Cooper being put up, and simply because I think she's a woman, that seems to be the only qualification. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, this is yet again part of the broader war in our history. It's no coincidence that the people who've been brought down in terms of pictures and so forth are our greatest heroes, you know, the giants of history, who we're now told are villains. There is no evidence whatsoever that Nelson supported slavery. The leading biographer of Nelson said the one letter that's held up as evidence was actually doctored after his death. But yet we've seen his portrait go down. We've mysteriously had William Wilberforce, the abolitionist of slavery, have his picture taken down. And 4 pictures of Elizabeth I have come down, whilst 4 of Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, have gone up. Someone please explain the logic behind that to me.
Aaron, the left hates our history and hates who we are.
Lindsay Hoyle, this giant of contemporary politics. I would hope that's not the case. I'm a great big fan of history. I live in Portsmouth. I would love to do a deal with the right. I would say, look, let's bring a few more things into public ownership and we can have a Nelson's column twice the size of the one in Trafalgar Square. Have it right as you enter.
Well, we're going to get an Yvette Cooper column at this rate.
Let's do the deal. Yeah, no, I mean, Cooper's column definitely can't happen. In all seriousness, I love history, and I think it's very important to have a good understanding of history, for better and worse. You mentioned the Museum of Slavery. There is, of course, already a Museum of Slavery in Liverpool. I'm not averse to that. I think it's really good that we teach young people everything they should and need to learn about British history, from the Industrial Revolution to the Agricultural Revolution to, of course, overseas empire. What I'm not happy about necessarily is the way this is litigated in a way that's more geopolitical, which is to say that I think you're right. You know, there are so many people right now with regards to modern-day slavery, people trafficking, etc. Doesn't seem to be taken that seriously, and yet this is a political football which we hear about a lot. 18 trillion, by the way. I mean, the US economy is about $25 trillion, so it's a lot of money.
But Patrick, this is exactly what J.D. Vance was talking about, wasn't it? The greatest threat to European nations is coming from within. And I would argue, actually, this judge is a great example of that. A guy who's completely out of touch with the average voter out there.
Right. Well, this Jamaican judge, my primary beef is not really with him. He's doing an outrageous grift to try and get money out of Western nations. The responsibility is with the leaders of Western nations, particularly with our own government, which is entertaining talks with the Commonwealth about reparations, right, which is outrageous. And that's what started off the Chagos deal, incidentally, when the Foreign Office persuaded the last Tory government with James Cleverly to initiate a negotiation. Now, one thing I will say for David Cameron, of all people, is when he became Foreign Secretary, he saw it as a pig in a poke and he pulled the plug on it. But we'd already had 9 rounds of talks by then, and it kind of set the basis for David Lammy, who has spoken in the House of Commons as if he was a Caribbean national rather than the British Foreign Secretary, to drive on the deal with Starmer and his international lawyer mates. The fault here is with our own governing class, and that's what J.D. Vance was 100% correct about. Not just the British, across Western Europe. In Eastern Europe, they tend to take a rather more robust position.
I couldn't see the Poles or the Hungarians tolerating this kind of approach to their national history. Rafe, everyone out there is going to be asking the same question. OK, we can sit here and complain about this stuff all day long. What do we do about it? How do we push back against this war on our history, this war on our past?
Well, we need to actually put Britain first again, if I can say that, both governmentally but also with our education system. We need to have a fair and balanced teaching of our history in schools, which people aren't being taught. They're taught the evils of slavery, and everyone should be taught the bad side of the British Empire, the bad side of slavery, but never do you hear about the West Africa Squadron. Never is there a call to build a monument to the Royal Navy squadron that stopped the Atlantic slave trade. There is not enough focus on all the great that the British Empire did in stopping abhorrent cultural practices, in enforcing an end to slavery in Africa, for example. A great reason to be proud. There were more Africans held in bondage by other Africans than ever crossed the Atlantic, and the British and the French stopped them enslaving each other. That's what we need to do, and we need a Foreign Secretary who realises that being Foreign Secretary means you don't put foreign interests first, you put British interests first, and unfortunately our government is prioritising the ideology of post-colonialism over our own national economic and security interests.
Well, thank you, Rafe, and I'm sure many of you out there will be nodding along with what he just said. Now, in a moment, we're going to be looking at the presence of Antifa at the Reform Party's conference the other day in Cornwall. I was there, I saw it all firsthand, I saw it all play out. It's truly horrific. We're going to be talking about that in a couple of minutes. See you shortly.
Good evening. It's time for your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office, and I have some good news if you're hoping for some fine weather as we go towards the very end of meteorological winter. High pressure is building, and so the frontal system that's brought quite a bit of rain today and then showers following behind is all going to get cleared away because of the high that's coming in from the west. That being said, we do still have some showery rain around as we go through overnight across parts of, well, northern England into the Midlands, also across parts of Wales, and there could be some sleet or snow for a time over higher ground. But away from the cloudier zones, there will be some clear skies, and under the clear skies, temperatures taking a bit of a dip, touch of frost quite likely, especially across parts of Scotland. The sheltered glens could drop a few degrees below freezing. Elsewhere, most towns and cities just about holding up above freezing. But across Scotland, it's generally going to be a bright start tomorrow for many places. Those showers across some northern and western coastal parts in particular. A few showers for coastal parts of Northern Ireland too, but across the bulk of England and Wales, apart from a few showers towards the southwest, it's looking largely dry away from the far east, across parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, even towards Kent and London. A bit cloudier here and some blustery showers around coastal parts, but a lot of this will ease away as we go through into the afternoon. Otherwise, there will still be a few showers towards the northwest, but not that many, and actually a good deal of bright sunny spells to be had, a bit sunnier than today for many of us, though temperatures not rising that high, highs around 8 or 9 in the north and 9 or 10 further south. After a cold, frosty night for many overnight into Friday, Friday's actually looking like another largely fine day. Even more sunshine on offer and dry for most of us, though towards the far northwest. There is going to be a bit of cloud building in later, and that's because there's a front arriving, and that's going to bring some wet weather to northern parts as we go into the weekend, but staying dry and fine towards the south. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Many of you will know that earlier this week the Reform Party hosted an electrifying conference in Cornwall on Monday evening, a huge turnout, about 1,000 people there. I was among a number of speakers who spoke to that crowd of Reform supporters and members, and also interested members of the public. But what I wasn't expecting was the turnout of the radical leftist group Antifa, who began trying to barricade the door and intimidating members who were trying to attend. I saw one member of the security team being physically assaulted, in fact losing a tooth in the process. What I wanted to ask tonight, as a result of all of that, is was this really actually a trailer for the next general election? Is what is a mainstream Democratic political party with more than 200,000 members now going to be facing intimidation and harassment from a violent extremist group like Antifa? Well, I'm joined tonight by my panel, columnist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Patrick, I was taken aback at the level of violence that came from Antifa members who are so brave and courageous that they wear balaclavas. What's going on here?
Well, I mean, it is very worrying because, was it Falmouth?
This was in Redruth. In
Redruth. Well, you know, that takes a lot of effort to get to if you're not from that part of Cornwall.
Takes 5 hours on a train.
Right. So this speaks to quite a level of militant and deliberative organisation. I'm quite sure they probably shipped a few students in, but in terms of the police allowing people from one wing of politics who are very hostile to people who are gathering for a peaceful meeting, allowing them to picket outside with face coverings, with masks, I think is a disgrace.
Well, and just to add to that, the venue was also being used by school children who were attending swimming lessons.
Right.
And families having to walk through this Antifa violent protest.
Yeah.
And the police, as far as I could see, the police were doing basically nothing.
Yeah, what I would like to ask the police who are in charge of that, let's face it, we've got the temperature in our politics is rising all the time. If one of those Antifa thuggish people in a mask had pulled out a knife and stabbed someone who was a Reform person going to the meeting and then melted into the crowd, well, they wouldn't have been able to easily detect who it was. And the fact that they allowed people who were hostile and aggressive to be masked up to face members of the public and people from an opposition political perspective, I think that's just outrageous. I've always believed in the phrase, show your face in a public space, and I think our police need to get back to that.
Aaron, why are there people on the left who resort to violence and intimidation rather than accept this as a perfectly democratic, legitimate political party?
Well, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a left-right thing.
But these people are clearly on the left.
But you're describing these things, and I just feel like this is a failure of the police. There's a public order situation which wasn't being monitored and subsequently law wasn't being enforced properly.
Well, the policing is one part of it, but let's focus on the Antifa thing. Why can't these people seem to accept that the Reform movement is not an extremist organisation?
Well, they think it is. They obviously think it is. And we live in a pluralistic, democratic society where people can have contrasting views. What I would say, Matt, is if I was in your situation, let's say I was going to and I've been in similar situations, but nothing quite like that. If I was going into a building and there was some sort of left-wing rally and there were hundreds of people protesting against me and similar things happened and somebody had a tooth knocked out, I would be pointing the finger at the police. Because you can have several hundred people protesting. 99% or 95% of them can be very well-behaved, law-abiding citizens, don't want to cause a problem. 2 or 3 individuals can completely change that, as in, knocking somebody see that. And that, to me, is a question of policing and law enforcement.
Let me just flip that scenario around for a minute. When I was watching your pal Jeremy Corbyn campaign in British politics, somebody who I considered to be an extremist, I sat there and thought, well, we live in a democracy. I think he should be able to hold rallies. I think he should be able to hold marches. I wasn't turning up, hiding behind a balaclava, getting in the way of kids going to their swimming lessons and trying to knock out members of a Democratic Party with 5 members of Parliament. And you say it isn't a left-right issue. I don't see people on the right doing this. I just see these lunatics in Antifa and similar organisations doing this. And I'm worried about where we're heading as we go towards the next general election, reform #1 in the polls. I think there should be sensible voices on the left, dare I say yourself included,
I try, Matt.
who should actually be saying, if we want to cool the temperature in this country, people like Antifa should protest peacefully, not use violence.
Well, I think nobody should be using physical force and nobody's tooth should be knocked out. Obviously, I think that. I should also add, though, throughout the entirety almost of his Labour leadership, 2015 to 2019, almost every single day the press were camped outside Jeremy Corbyn's front door. So this idea that somehow the left gets away with it and, the right is mistreated, that has not happened to any political leader in this country before, hasn't happened since. I have no idea what Keir Starmer's front door looks like, or Nigel Farage's for that matter. But I do agree with you to this extent. Today it's reform. It's the right, tomorrow it could be the left, and we have to guarantee freedom of speech and freedom of political association.
Just briefly, Patrick, are you concerned about where the country's going as we head to the general election, reform #1? You've got Labour MPs saying we need to protest all the big reform conferences.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Labour MPs, probably up to Keir Starmer as well, are kind of doing a no-fingerprints, tacit encouragement of some of these left-wing activist groups. And I also think there's a particular danger with left-wing people being in a bubble and only talking to each other.
OK, well, a spokesman for Devon and Cornwall Police has said this. Police were aware of a political party event at Cambria Leisure Centre in Cornwall. Officers attended in order to ensure the safety of those present and prevent any potential breach of the peace. There were reports of minor issues that occurred between protesters and counter-protesters, which were brought under control by officers. No arrests were made. Thank you to my panel. Up next is Patrick Christis. Patrick, what have you got on your show this evening?
Loads coming your way, Matt. Would you give up meat, your car and your money, all to fulfil Ed Miliband's net zero fantasy? I list all of the things that they want you to give up. Robert Jemrick is joining me live on the Chagos surrender deal as Starmer fudged the defence numbers on that. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, has been locked, still is actually, on an aeroplane with the Prime Minister on his way to Washington. He's got some exclusive lines for us that I can reveal to you at 10:30. And why did Sadiq Khan not want there to be a grooming gang inquiry for London? We pick all of that apart, so stay tuned.
Oh, splendid stuff, Patrick. Just while you're there, I mean, it's not just Sadiq Khan, is it? It's also Bradford. A lot of these local areas don't seem to want to lift the lid.
I wonder why that could be, Matt, but we'll talk about that live on my show.
Indeed. Well, that's all coming up after the weather. Now, I'll be back tomorrow night right here on State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. As ever, thanks for tuning in. I will see you tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. right here on State of the Nation. Stay here for Patrick Christis up next.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. It's time for your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. And I have some good news if you're hoping for some fine weather as we go towards the very end of meteorological winter. High pressure is building, and so the frontal system that's brought quite a bit of rain today and then showers following behind is all going to get cleared away because of the high that's coming in from the west. That being said, we do still have some showery rain around as we go through overnight across parts of, well, northern England into the Midlands, also across parts of Wales, and there could be some sleet or snow for a time over higher ground. But away from the cloudier zones, there will be some clear skies, and under the clear skies, temperatures taking a bit of a dip, touch of frost quite likely, especially across parts of Scotland. The sheltered glens could drop a few degrees below freezing. Elsewhere, most towns and cities just about holding up above freezing. But across Scotland, it's generally going to be a bright start tomorrow for many places. Those showers across some northern and western coastal parts in particular. A few showers for coastal parts of Northern Ireland too, but across the bulk of England and Wales, apart from a few showers towards the southwest, it's looking largely dry away from the far east, across parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, even towards Kent and London. A bit cloudier here and some blustery showers around coastal parts, but a lot of this will ease away as we go through into the afternoon. Otherwise, there will still be a few showers towards the northwest, but not that many, and actually a good deal of bright sunny spells to be had, a bit sunnier than today for many of us, though temperatures not rising that high, highs of around 8 or 9 in the north and 9 or 10 further south. After a cold, frosty night for many overnight into Friday, Friday's actually looking like another largely fine day. Even more sunshine on offer and dry for most of us, though towards the far northwest. There is going to be a bit of cloud building in later, and that's because there's a front arriving, and that's going to bring some wet weather to northern parts as we go into the weekend, but staying dry and fine towards the south. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232.